So hello everyone, this is the Promo Tours channel. I'm starting the assembly of the Mercedes-Benz 447 engine. This engine was removed from a bus like this. The engine disassembly is on my channel, the link is in the video description. The engine block has returned from machining. This is how it looks, meaning it was transported in a gazelle van and it was freezing outside about 30 degrees below zero. The gazelle van drove into a warm garage, frost formed, melted, and the block got covered with this kind of rust. Here we can see that after machining the bearing seats, everything is covered in rust. Well, in general, now I'll have to do something about this. Well, in any case, I'm gonna wash the block again now. First, I'll clean out the channels with diesel fuel. Now I'm removing all these plugs from the oil channels, taking off the covers. I wash the channels with diesel fuel, then blow them out in the washer. Well, in general, there's still a lot of work to do on the block. I'll chase the threads, clean old gaskets, and more. As for machining, the standard stuff, resurfacing the cylinder head mating surface, the seats for the liners, and the main bearing saddles. So they took about 0.27 millimeters off the cylinder head mating surface, let's just say 3/10. There you go. And the pistons are already prepared. We're keeping the old pistons. I knew that about 3/10 were removed from the block, so I also machined each piston and took 3/10 off the piston crown. I also cleaned the piston ring grooves from carbon buildup. So my pistons are already prepared. I'm preparing the block and then I'll start the assembly. I start by replacing the camshaft bushings. Then I install the lifters, the camshaft, new cylinder liners, the crankshaft, and the connecting rods. The connecting rods haven't arrived yet, they're still being machined. Well, in general, I still have work to do. I need to work on the compressor, fix the pump, and clean some other parts. So that's the amount of work we have. Let's get started. So I worked on the block off camera. I already cleaned it, washed it again, flushed all the channels. Basically did everything I mentioned earlier. So I've already put the plugs in place with thread locker. And I've also installed the oil nozzles. Ones, that is everything. The block is ready for assembly. We're keeping the old camshaft. It's in excellent condition. I cleaned it, blew it out, got it ready for installation. Prepared the gear, the bolts, the compressor drive gear, and the bolts that secure it. Here we have new bushings, and here we have new lifters. So I installed the cylinder liners. The cylinder liners are from SM Engine, that's the manufacturer. I put them in several times and there don't seem to be any issues. So on the block where the upper sealing rubber rings are seated, there are some defects and some corrosion. I use sealant there just to be safe, although usually nothing happens even without it. Well, I decided to be cautious, so I applied sealant to the block itself and to the liner. Where there's a chamfer at the top, I filled that with sealant as well. And first I installed the liners. The liners were installed without the rubber rings, as usual. I measured the protrusion, and it's about 0.78 millimeters. After the machinists work on it, everything is always fine. There are never any complaints. So I measured it without the rubber rings, just then installed the block's rubber rings. Just put the ring on the liner, installed the 0.15 millimeter shims. И сейчас там нужно apply the sealant. So what do I need to do now? Now I'll press each sleeve in 2 places, just to make sure the sleeve sits in its place, so that all the sealant gets pressed and spread out properly, basically to distribute it, and so that the sealant dries in this position. Because right now maybe somewhere the sleeve is sticking out more, like here for example, it's sticking out about 0.3 mm. Clamping down the cylinder liners, and then I'll go ahead and install the crankshaft. I'm tightening it. Alright, so I installed the crankshaft, tightened it, torqued it to 330 Newton meters, then turned it another 90 degrees. Next, I'll be installing the pistons. The pistons we have are old. I've already been to the machine shop, had a machine, and took 3/10 off the piston crowns. Well, the same amount that was taken off the block and the cylinder head mating surface. The connecting rods were also machined. The piston pin bushing was replaced, well, and they also machined it. We checked the seat for the connecting rod bearings here. Basically everything is fine here, there's no ovality. The bushing was machined for the old pin. I gave them 1 pin. So now I'm installing the pistons onto the connecting rods. I'm installing new piston rings and new bearings. Well, and I'm installing the pistons into the block. After the connecting rods, I tighten the counterweights. Well, and then I install the front cover, the rear cover, and the oil pan. So the pistons are installed. Now I'm tightening the bolts. I'm tightening to 110 Newton meters, then turning another 90 degrees, and then I install the counterweights. There it's also 110 and a 90-degree turn, so I worked for a while without the camera. I installed the counterweights and tightened them. Also 110 Newton meters, then a 90-degree turn. So that's it. The crank and rod assembly is fully installed. Everything is done. The crankshaft is tightened. The connecting rod bolts are tightened. And the counterweights are tightened. So I've already checked everything. How the oil jets fit into the recess in the piston. In general, I've checked everything, so everything is good there. I've already installed the front cover here. Well, I washed and cleaned everything. Of course, there's a new gasket and a new seal without a spring earling. There's also a new running ring on the crankshaft. I installed that as well. The rear cover, the flywheel housing, there's also a new seal here. There's also a new wear ring on the flywheel. And I also replaced the ring gear on the flywheel. I took the ring gear from another flywheel, picked one in good condition. I cleaned it in a sandblasting chamber. Well, I turned it the other way around and installed it. So I installed the flywheel and tightened it. Here we have a flywheel of this design, and there's also a damper plate. So on that side there's a hole in the housing, and on that side the bolts are screwed into the transmission torque converter. Here we have a hydromechanical transmission, but it's an automatic gearbox, so there's no clutch. So everything is tightened here as well. And I also installed this cover that covers the compressor drive gear. I also washed and cleaned it with it. I installed a homemade gasket because the factory gasket is made of paronite and it constantly gets squeezed out here. In this spot it always gets squeezed out. So this is actually the front engine mount. It turns out that the whole engine hangs on these 610mm bolts. Well, the whole front part, the entire front section. Here we have the front engine mount attached. That's why I'm installing a homemade gasket made of thin cardboard here. And then I tighten these bolts all the way with thread locker, because there have been cases where this cover, well, basically it starts to get loose and wobble, or the gasket gets squeezed out and oil starts to leak. That's it. I also installed this cover. I tightened it. Next, I'll be installing the oil pan and closing it up, and the fuel injection pump. So we didn't do anything with the injection pump plungers, because the driver said they were completely satisfied with it. They didn't even bother to check it. So the only thing we did was replace this cover as a whole, because as you can see, there are additional brackets on the rack here. These are for the transmission control. The rods from the transmission come here. In general, it all works together as a pair. And here, this bushing was worn out. I fixed it as best as I could. There's still a little bit of play left. And also, this mounting seat on the pump itself was worn out. So not only did it wear out the bushing, but also the housing itself. That's why we replaced this rear cover with one from another pump. And basically everything is fine here now. So, what did I do? Well, I think I also cleaned the pump. I checked the tightness of these bolts. I've already installed it on the engine yet. I checked the mark there. Well, whether it matches or not, whether fine adjustment is needed or not. So everything is fine. No fine adjustment is needed. Nothing got out of place. Also, while it was lying there, I washed it, so it's clean. And in this spot, I noticed some oil leaks. So I think it was coming from under this cover. I opened it, sealed it with gasket maker, and put it back in place. So, the pump is ready. Now I'm going to install it. I'll put on the ring, apply some sealant, and install it. Also, I need to reattach one bracket here. An additional mount, I also prepared the oil pan for installation. I think I cleaned it. Here we had floats on one side and on the other side. This basically is on this bus. It's the oil top-up system. That is, two floats control the oil level. And if the level drops, oil is automatically added to the sump. Well, obviously nothing has worked for a long time. And here basically there were sensors and wires. They decided to remove all of that and just put in plugs. And also here we have a line for quick oil extraction, for pumping the oil out. No one uses this either. I installed a plug here, so my oil pan is prepared as well for installation. Now I'm going to close it. I also prepared the oil pumps. Since our engine runs on its side, we have two pumps here. One is the main pump. Here is the oil pickup. This is the oil supply to the system. And the second one is auxiliary. It simply pumps oil from the block, let's say, into the main sump, into the oil reservoir. So here we have a recess on the block, and from this spot the pump draws oil out. It pumps the oil and it dumps it here into this part of the oil pan where we already have the main pump. It circulates oil through the system, so the pumps here are also working fine. I checked them to see how they pump oil, so everything is excellent. This pump works even at such low revolutions. You can just turn it by hand like this. With a tube of this length and at this height, it pumps diesel without any problems. So the pressure relief valve also remains the old one. This is our jumper, the drive for the second oil pump. And I've also prepared the bolts for mounting the pump. Yesterday the cylinder heads arrived back from the surface grinder. Next I'll be working on the cylinder heads. That means replacing the valve guides and lapping the new valves. So next I'm installing the cylinder heads. The heads are already prepared. So the cylinder heads had been surfaced. I replaced the valve guides and also installed new exhaust valves. The exhaust valves are still the old ones. So I also replaced the bushings, reamed them, lapped them, installed new valve stem seals, and assembled the cylinder heads. Right here we had problems with this channel, with the sediment pocket. That is, the heads are there, but there are no channels in the block. And here, as a rule, all the debris collects. It gets clogged with trash, scale deposits, and so on. It's basically a sediment trap here. And as a result, it starts to corrode it. It depends on the quality of the antifreeze. At our company, they use not very good antifreeze. And here, as a rule, this channel gets corroded. And basically the gasket, the rubber sealing ring, no longer covers this channel. In total, there were 5 such cylinder heads. Usually, I solved all this by installing soft metal asbestos gaskets. That is, the sealing is achieved through the entire gasket. With a metal gasket, the sealing is achieved only by the rubber ring. But right now, such gaskets are not available. I tried to find a supplier. No, not Goethe. They used to always use Goethe before. Then for some time they used AVL Craft Technic Company. So the same kind of gaskets, just from a different manufacturer. Not now, neither of those manufacturers. I don't know really, so here's what I did. I cut the thread. First I drilled it to 18.5, then I cut a 20mm thread with a 1.5 pitch. I machined the plugs. Well, from the compressor, from the water channels, I clamped a hex bar in the lathe chuck. I put this hex plug onto the hex bar. I turn it down to 20mm, and I cut a 20mm thread with a 1.5 pitch. Everything is done on this hex bar. Well, and then I secure this plug with thread locker. So it turns out to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. Well, one of the heads here is in good condition. I actually replaced it once before. There you go. Well, I also want to say that on MAN heads, well, the MAN engine 2086, for example, the head is almost the same. And this channel is blocked. That is, there's a plug, it's just driven in. If you want, you can take it out, clean this channel and put the plug back in. On Mercedes heads, there's nothing like that. Here we just have an open channel like this. That's it. So the heads are ready. I've prepared the bolts. Well, and this time we'll be using Lemma brand gaskets. That's 3 packs with 2 gaskets each. That's it. So I'm installing the heads right away. I'm installing the push rods and rocker arm shafts, adjusting the valves. Then the injectors, valves, covers and manifold, all installed step by step. Alright, the engine is running. It's smooth and steady. There's almost no smoke. Of course, it'll run even better later, once the rings and liners wear in. So the pressure is as high as possible, around 6.57, which is when the relief valve kicks in. Well, that's basically it. I filled it with oil, the oil stays in, and the engine will be installed already filled with oil. They'll also install the filler neck and the dipstick tube on site. And there's a breather right on the filler neck. That's it. So that's how our engine repair turned out. I'll wrap up this episode here. Thanks everyone for watching. Good luck to all, and goodbye.